Superman is a 1978 superhero film based on DC Comics featuring the eponymous character, played by Christopher Reeve. It is the first of 4 installments in the Superman film series starring Reeve as Superman. It depicts the origin of Superman, including his infancy as Kal-El of Krypton, son of Jor-El, and his youthful years in the rural town of Smallville. Disguised as reporter Clark Kent, he adopts a mild-mannered disposition in Metropolis and develops a romance with Lois Lane while battling the villainous Lex Luthor. Welcome back to DC Movie Rewind, where we look back at every live-action DC movie. Today we are discussing Superman from 1978. Superman was last on the big screen in 1951's Superman and the Mole Men, starring the unrelated George Reeves. Since then, there was a TV show also starring George Reeves, 2 failed related television pilots, and a TV special. Ilya Salkind had first conceived the idea for a Superman film in late 1973. In November 1974, after a long, difficult process with DC Comics, the Superman film rights were purchased by Ilya, his father Alexander Salkind, and their partner Pierre Spengler. The filmmakers felt it was best to film Superman and Superman 2 back-to-back, and to make a negative pickup deal with Warner Brothers. William Goldman was approached to write the screenplay, while Leigh Brackett was considered. Ilya hired Alfred Bester, who began writing a film treatment. Alexander felt, however, that Bester was not famous enough, so he hired Mario Puzo to write the screenplay at a $600,000 salary. Francis Ford Coppola, William Friedkin, Richard Lester, who later directed Superman 2 and 3, Peter Yates, John Gillerman, Ronald Neame, and Sam Peckinpah were in negotiations to direct. Peckinpah dropped out when he produced a gun during a meeting with Ilya. George Lucas turned down the offer because of his commitment to Star Wars. Ilya wanted to hire Steven Spielberg to direct, but Alexander was skeptical. But 1975's Jaws was very successful, prompting the producers to offer Spielberg the position. But by then Spielberg had already committed to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Guy Hamilton was hired as director, while Puzo delivered a script for Superman and Superman 2 in July 1975. Jax appeared as one of General Zod's henchmen, with Clark Kent written as a television reporter. Dustin Hoffman, who was previously considered for Superman, turned down Lex Luthor. In early 1975, Brando signed on as Jor-El with a salary of $3.7 million and 11.75% of the box office gross profits, totaling $19 million. He horrified Salkind by proposing in their first meeting that Jor-El appear as a green suitcase or a bagel with Brando's voice, but Donner used flattery to persuade the actor to portray Jor-El himself. Brando hoped to use some of his salary for a proposed 13-part Roots-style miniseries on Native Americans in the United States. Brando had it in his contract to complete all of his scenes in 12 days. He also refused to memorize his dialogue, so cue cards were compiled across the set. Fellow Oscar winner Hackman was cast as Lex Luthor days later. Though the Salkinds felt that Puzo had written a solid story for the 2-part film, they deemed his scripts as very heavy, and so hired Robert Benton and David Newman for rewrite work. Benton became too busy directing The Late Show, so David's wife Leslie was brought in to help her husband finish writing duties. George MacDonald Fraser was later hired to do some work on the script, but he says he did little. Their script was submitted in July 1976 and had a camp tone, including a cameo appearance by Telly Savalas as his Kojak character. The scripts for Superman and Superman 2 were now at over 400 pages combined. Pre-production started at Cinecittà Studios in Rome, with sets starting construction and flying tests being unsuccessfully experimented. Marlon Brando found out he could not film in Italy because of a warrant out for his arrest, a sexual obscenity charge from Last Tango in Paris. Production moved to England in late 1976, but Hamilton could not join because he was a tax exile. Hamilton left the project as he was also ill. Marc Robeson was strongly considered and was in talks to direct, but after seeing The Omen, the producers hired Richard Donner. Donner had previously been planning Damien, Omen 2, when he was hired in January 1977 for $1 million to direct Superman and Superman 2. Donner felt it was best to start from scratch. Donner was dissatisfied with the campy script and brought in Tom Mankiewicz to perform a rewrite. Mankiewicz conceived having each Kryptonian family wear a crest resembling a different letter, justifying the S on Superman's costume. The Writers Guild of America refused to credit Mankiewicz for his rewrites, so Donner gave him a creative consultant credit, much to the annoyance of the Guild. Every known actor to be considered for Superman include Muhammad Ali, Al Pacino, James Caan, Steve McQueen, Clint Eastwood, Dustin Hoffman, Robert Redford, Burt Reynolds, Sylvester Stallone, Paul Newman, Bruce Jenner, Patrick Wayne, Neil Diamond, Patrick Schwarzenegger, James Brolin, Lyle Wagner, Christopher Walken, Nick Nolte, Jon Voight, Perry King, Chris Christopherson, Charles Bronson, Warren Beatty, and the producer's wife's dentist? Over 200 unknown actors also auditioned for Superman. When it was next decided to cast an unknown actor, casting director Lynn Stallmaster first suggested Christopher Reeve, but Donner and the producers felt he was too young and skinny. Stallmaster convinced Donner and Ilya to have Reeve screen test in February 1977. Reeve stunned the director and producers. He was told to wear a muscle suit to produce the desired muscular physique, but Reeve refused, instead undertaking a strict physical exercise regime headed by David Prowse. Prowse had wanted to portray Superman, but was denied an audition by the filmmakers because he was not American. Prowse also auditioned for Non. Reeve went from 188 pounds, or 85 kilograms, to 212 pounds, or 96 kilograms, during pre-production and filming. Reeve earned only $250,000 for both Superman and Superman 2, while his veteran co-stars received huge sums of money, $3.7 million for Brando and $2 million for Hackman for Superman. Jeff East portrays teenage Clark Kent. East's lines were overdubbed by Reeve during post-production. East also tore several thigh muscles when performing the stunt of racing alongside the train. Technicians applied 3 to 4 hours of prosthetic makeup daily to increase his resemblance to Reeve. Now finally, let's talk about the production.
God, look up there!
What the hell is that?
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you?
The movie was produced by Dove Meat Ltd. And distributed by Warner Bros. It was directed by Richard Donner, known for The Omen. The movie was written by Mario Puzo of The Godfather fame. The movie was also produced by Pierre Spengler. Principal photography began on March 28, 1977 at Pinewood Studios for the Krypton scenes, budgeted as the most expensive film ever made at that point, which was $55 million. It held that record for 10 years, until Rambo 3 and Who Framed Roger Rabbit surpassed it. Because Superman was being shot simultaneously with Superman 2, filming lasted 19 months until October 1978. The Fortress of Solitude was constructed at Shepperton Studios and at Pinewood's 007 stage. Upon viewing the footage of Krypton, Warner Bros. Decided to distribute in not only North America, but also in foreign countries. Due to complications and problems during filming, Warner Bros. Also supplied $20 million in acquired television rights. New York City doubled for Metropolis, while the New York Daily News building served as the location for the offices of the Daily Planet. Brooklyn Heights was also used. Filming in New York lasted 5 weeks, during the time of the New York City blackout of 1977. Production moved to Alberta for scenes set in Smallville, with the cemetery scene filmed in the canyon of Benyon, Alberta, the high school football scenes at Barron's, Alberta, and the Kent Farm constructed at Blackie, Alberta. Brief filming also took place in Gallup, New Mexico, Lake Mead, and Grand Central Terminal. It was decided to stop shooting Superman 2 and focus on finishing Superman. Donner had already completed 75% of the sequel. The filmmakers took a risk. If Superman was a box office bomb, they would not finish Superman 2. The original climax for Superman 2 had General Zod, Ursa, and Non destroying the planet, with Superman time traveling to fix the damage.
Why are you here? There must be a reason for you to be here.
Yes, I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
You're gonna end up fighting every elected official in this country.
Superman was originally scheduled to be released in June 1978, the 40th anniversary of Action Comics 1, which first introduced Superman, but the problems during filming pushed the film back by 6 months. Warner Bros. Pictures spent $6 to $7 million on marketing the film. Superman premiered at the Uptown Theater in Washington, D.C. on December 10, 1978, with director Richard Donner and several cast members in attendance. 3 days later, on December 13th, it had a European royal charity premiere at the Empire Leicester Square in London, with Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Andrew in attendance. The film was widely released to theaters on December 15, 1978. The film features an ensemble cast, including Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, Christopher Reeve, Jeff East, Margot Kidder, Glenn Ford, Phyllis Thaxter, Jackie Cooper, Trevor Howard, Marc McClure, Terence Stamp, Valerie Perrine, Ned Beatty, Jack O'Halloran, Maria Schell, and Sarah Douglas. It had a budget of $55 million and made $300 million in the box office. It currently has an 88% critic score and an 86% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, and an 82 Metacritic score. Superman set a new all-time U.S. industry record for business during a pre-Christmas week with $12 million, and set new records for Warner Bros. For their best opening day at $2.8 million and 3-day weekend at $7.5 million. For the week of December 22nd to 28th, it set an all-time U.S. weekly record of $18.5 million. It also set a record single-day gross for Warner Bros. With a gross of $3.8 million. In its third weekend, it grossed $13.1 million for the 4-day holiday weekend, setting a record 18-day gross of $43.7 million. Approximately 120 million people saw Superman in the opening theatrical run in 1978. Including re-releases, it went on to gross $134.5 million in the United States and Canada, and $166 million internationally, totaling $300.5 million worldwide. Superman was the second highest-grossing film of 1978 in North America. It was also Warner Bros.' most successful film at the time. Superman was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Film Editing for Stuart Bird, Best Original Score for John Williams, and Best Sound for Gordon K. McCallum, Graham V. Hartstone, Nicholas LeMessurier, and Roy Charman. It also received a Special Achievement Academy Award for its visual effects. Because Superman went into production prior to the releases of Star Wars in May of 1977 and Close Encounters of the Third Kind in November of 1977, some observers credit the 3 films collectively for launching the re-emergence of a large market for science fiction films in the 1980s. This is certainly the view of Superman producer Ilya Salkind and some who have interviewed him, as well as of film production assistant Brad Lohan. Other observers of film history tend to credit the resurgence of science fiction films simply to the Lucas and Spielberg productions, and see Superman as the first of the new cycle of films launched by the first 2. Superman also established the superhero film genre as viable outside the production of low-budget Saturday matinee serials. The movie also received praise for Reeve's performance and John Williams' musical score. Groundbreaking in its use of special effects and science fiction fantasy storytelling, the film's legacy presaged the mainstream popularity of Hollywood superhero film franchises. In 2017, Superman was selected for preservation by the Library of Congress's National Film Registry. Superman got a sequel 2 years later in 1980, titled Superman 2. An extended TV version of Superman was also released for the first time in 1982. With that being said, thanks for watching. Next time we'll be talking about said sequel, Superman 2. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more, consider giving a like or rating and subscribing with notifications so you never miss an episode. It's free. Also feel free to check out our other episodes and share this podcast with others on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time on Movie Rewind.